I figured it'd be a little easier to make a small video here, um, mostly for Ted and Peter, who are fellow Minnesotans. But I'm just gonna go over my collection of video games, and if I recommend them as being obscure or popular or just games that I played when I was a kid. Well, I'll start with recent acquisitions. Um, some of these I bought, and they are bad, but come on. Gotta have at least one or two in your collection. We'll start with the one that everybody knows. That's not gonna come in very well, but I picked up a copy of Shaq Fu. It's cheap, but you know, there's people on the. They want to go out and destroy every copy that exists. But it's actually fun if you play it with a couple of friends. It's not the greatest game, but I wouldn't say it's actually bad. But one that actually is pretty bad, Rise of the Robots. I rented this game when I was a kid. Had one of the songs stuck in my head for 10 years before I figured out what game it was from. That game is bad, and I have that, mainly just for that story. Everybody knows Space Invaders. Not much needs to be said about that one. Not a lot of people might know Ice Climber. If you played Smash Brothers, you know about Ice Climbers. Then, one of the most popular arcade games of the old days. Got some Donkey Kong, or Donkey Kong. This is actually the Donkey Kong Classics, which also includes Donkey Kong Jr. This one is actually cheaper than buying Donkey Kong on its own, so if you want to save a little bit of money and get two bangs for your buck, this one's a better one for you. So that was one day's acquisition. Another one, if you like puzzle games, and if you notice or played a lot of Kirby Superstar, you might recognize this character. But this is Lolo. It is a puzzle game. I believe it's the second or third level of the first act. In Kirby Superstar, you fight bosses Lolo and La La La. This would be one of them. And I did procure a couple of Genesis games recently. So we have, and some of the price tags are going to be still on these. I haven't actually cleaned them up yet, but these are my most recent acquisitions. We have Golden Axe 2, great beat 'em up for Genesis. We have Shinobi 3, which is about as difficult as Ninja Gaiden or Strider or any other of the action platformers of that era. And a game that mostly nostalgic to me because I love the movies. It's not bad, it's kind of difficult, but it's an interesting game. It's Predator 2. Haven't really played too much of it yet, I just kind of bought that one on a whim. And then Golden Axe 1, the first one. If anybody is familiar with Genesis games, most people, if not all people, have played one of the Golden Axe games. And a game that really needs no introduction. We'll just show it there for half a second. And if anybody's familiar with Rareware games or likes isometric racing games, Cobra Triangle, one of Rareware's hidden gems on the NES. Kind of plays like Micro Machines if you ever played that one. Significantly more popular than this one, but you can actually shoot and blow up other vehicles in this one, I believe. So, still meaning to get around to playing that one. But I'm sure you'll realize very soon that I have a lot of games. We'll get into another couple of games here. I do love my shooters. So here's one that I was looking for a while. It's Firepower 2000. You can either choose to be an on-ground vehicle with 8-direction shooting or a helicopter with, I think it's 4-direction shooting. I can't remember entirely, but it's an awesome game. Still getting around to playing it and beating it myself. And speaking of shooters, one that I recently found on Genesis, Thunder Force 2. One of the more bizarre shooters that I've ever played. It's not side-scrolling or top-down. It's free-scrolling. So basically, you control the ship's direction, and enemies spawn in various patterns, and you shoot them and progress through the level, and then it goes to a side-scrolling or a top-down, so it's multi-purpose. And then this game, I only bought because it's fun to have somebody try to figure out a game that's extremely cryptic. This game gives you no hints. Doors are basically invisible. You go into a section and you can't leave until you figure out where the invisible objects are. It's kind of just a pain, but it's still fun. So those are my recent acquisitions. And now, the fun part. I have a literal drawer full of games. And I'm running out of room for all of these. It's kind of getting overwhelming, which is why I'm building some shelves this summer. So we'll start with some peripherals first. I have a Super Game Boy. Since covered that, we will go through all of my Game Boy games. I really should remember where everything is in here because this drawer is so meticulously organized so that everything fits. But go over the Game Boy games that I have for that. We have Burger Time Deluxe. I love me some Burger Time. Kirby's Pinball Land, which is awesome. One of the better pinball games from that time. Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening DX really needs no introduction. Everybody played that one. R-Type DX though, that's it's actually 2 or 3 games on here, and you can swap between arcade and original, which is pretty high tech for a Game Boy game at the time. Super Mario Land 2, everybody knows that one. The original Super Mario Land, everybody knows that one. Kind of picked this one up on a whim. Galaga Galaxian, one of the other ones that also has both arcade and non-arcade versions. And Kirby Block Ball, which is like Breakout, but with Kirby. And once again, Danky Kang. We got Danky Kang. Alright, so that covers all of my Game Boy. Do have the Game Genie. I've only had to use it on 2 games, but they're ridiculously impossible anyway, so I kind of had no choice. Alright. We have Street Fighter 2. Most people played that or heard of it or know of it, but a little more obscure. It's another fighting game. It's called Weapon Lord. I have this one, but that's mainly because I talked with the guy that developed this game, and he recommended I play it if I want to have a challenging fighting game. And here's the one I was talking about. This is RPM Racing, or Radical Psycho Machine Racing. Most people don't know about this game. It's pretty under the radar, but everybody's heard of Rock and Roll Racing. This is the prequel to Rock and Roll Racing, or the first in the series. Super Mario Kart, everybody knows that one, so we'll just cover that one quick. Is it in here? Yeah, okay. So we'll skip this one. This is a unlabeled cartridge, but it's got a very expensive game in it. That was a ROM that somebody made. I have the actual shell, but it's not an actual circuit board for it. So I swapped it and kept the actual shell protected. I think I have that in the top drawer. Probably along with a couple more games up here, don't I? Yeah. Yep, I have it. There we go. This one is called Hagane. You can look that up. That game is $600, I believe, now. Pretty high sought-after collectible right now. But I just have the shelf for it, unfortunately. Next, we have Mystical Ninja. It is actually a really fun 2-player beat-em-up RPG. Definitely recommend worth a play if you can find it. Next one, Kirby's Dream Course. It's kind of like mini golf with Kirby. It's pretty fun multiplayer game if you want to duke it out with a friend. It also does have a story mode. And this is my Japanese copy of Hagane, which is an actual legit cartridge. It's only about a fraction of the value of the North American cartridge. That one is a Blockbuster exclusive, which is why it's so rare. One of my most dreaded games as a child. I have never beaten this game. Still have never beaten this game. But it is Spider-Man and Venom Maximum Carnage. Probably one of the hardest games I've ever played. Fun platformer kind of bought on a whim. Disney game. Maui Mallard Cold Shadow. It's actually a Donald Duck game, but, you know, who knows why they call it Maui Mallard. Yeah, Maui Mallard. Super Metroid. Very well-known game. Usually number 1 or number 2 on everyone's list. Let's see, what else do I have? Got the Nintendo Game Genie. Another cheat device. Let's see, what else do I got for Super Nintendo games in here? We're not even barely scratching the surface yet, and we're at 11 and a half minutes. So we got Super Empire Strikes Back. If you want a difficult game, that'd be one to play for you. This is a game that really caught me by surprise. It's a puzzle action platformer that has real-time kind of combat in it, where you can take cover and leave cover to try and shoot your enemies. I would look up some information on it. I can't really explain it too well myself because I've never actually beaten it or played it for a long period of time yet. So like I said, I have a lot of games, and I'm still struggling to play through all of them. Another one that I found on a whim, Spanky's Quest. You are a monkey that blows bubbles that can bounce them on his head to turn them into sports balls, like soccer balls, basketballs, baseballs, all while fighting anthropomorphic fruit. Can't make this stuff up. I also love me some mech shooter games. I really wanted Metal Warriors, but Metal Warriors is like $300 or more right now. So I got a cheaper alternative called Cybernator. Basically the same gameplay, not as optimized, but still a lot of fun. We're almost to the bottom of bin 1. Pull out a few here. Another kind of obscure one. I used to rent this one as a kid. Anyone who's a wrestling fan and a Godzilla fan would love this game. King of the Monsters. You can play as a giant rock man, a lizard, or a beetle, or kind of guy that's like kind of looks like Captain Falcon, but you pretty much are like king-size monsters, and you wrestle in a city. That's really the best way to explain it. Next up, another game from my childhood, Uniracers. There's an interesting story behind this game. Pixar sued them to cease development because animated unicycles were apparently an infringement on Red's Dream, which is an animated short about a unicycle. And they won the lawsuit, which means they had to stop producing this game, which is kind of crap, because just because you have a short cartoon doesn't mean you own the rights to all animated unicycles, because there's like 4 moving parts that you can make in an animated unicycle: pedals, wheels, frames, and seat. You can't just say that, oh, I made a car that's animated, so I own all the rights to every animated car type of thing. But it is what it is. It's still a fun game, and it's multiplayer, so it's well worth it if you want to play with a friend. We have a few here that we'll go through pretty quick because they're pretty, everybody knows them. Mario All-Stars. It's Mario 1, 2, 3, and Lost Levels, which is actual Mario 2 that Japan kept from us because we weren't good enough gamers. Castlevania 4. Excellent game if you love the Castlevania series. It's usually regarded as one of the best in the series. Once again, I love my shooters. So we have Super R-Type. An obscure fighting game from my childhood, World Heroes 2. It's pretty interesting. It's got some crazy special moves, some weird, like really weird characters. You have like a football player, a Viking, a pirate, some robot guy. Yeah, it's fun, worth a try, but you really have to like fighting games, want to play it. Another extremely well-known one, we have Pilot Wings. It's notoriously difficult. You'll hear a lot about that if you look up any information on it. Now this is a professionally done reproduction of a game that was unreleased in the US. This is a translated Secret of Mana 2, because it was normally Japan only. And this one came through the store, and I had to have it because I love Secret of Mana. It is an awesome RPG. So if you watched on the basement, they did a ROM hack of Secret of Evermore, which is multiplayer. That is the predecessor to this game. And right here now we have King of the Monsters 2. Now I know the first one was a wrestling game. They actually completely changed up everything about this one. This one is a beat 'em up now. You play 2 players on the same team, co-op, and you go through several stages of fighting other king-size monsters. Oh boy, we are about 1/5 through this stack of games, if not less. But another one of my side-scrolling shooters, Legendary Wings. I haven't played it much, don't know a whole lot about it yet. And this one's an oddball one. It's another shooter. It's called King's Knight by Square. You might know them as the Final Fantasy creators. This predates Final Fantasy, but they were still all about the hero as a knight, the damsel in distress, and all that. But the thing that's difficult about this game is you play 4 separate stories with 4 separate characters, but if you fail at any one of them, you cannot complete the game. And you don't know that until you've actually gotten to that point. So, good luck with this one, if you ever decide. We'll get to my next games here. So we got a few obscure ones here. We have Mega Man Soccer. It's a lot of fun to play 2 players, but it is not very fun to play against the AI. They cheat a lot. It's a game from my friend's childhood, but I picked it up for her. It's called Warlock. It's an action platformer. It's pretty tough, like really tough, but it was still fun for the little bit that I played of it. Another game that really doesn't need any introduction, Miss Pac-Man. And I did say that I like my robot shooters. While this game isn't the greatest game, I still had a decent time with it, and I did manage to find some serious exploits in this game, like infinite power-ups, infinite lives, and fast leveling. We got a few games coming up here that pretty much everybody will know. We have Super Mario World, Kirby Superstar, Contra 3. You have Mega Man X with, from my childhood, my boss order slip. It's not that old, but it's still like 7 or 8 years old, and I kept them together. It's got weaknesses of power-ups and everything like that. It's always... I love when people bring stuff into the store and they have that type of stuff with it. It's just that little novelty, like somebody took the time to make this when they were a kid. Yoshi's Island. Another very popular shooter, Gradius 3. Another extremely popular game, Link to the Past. And this here is a game that I hunted for about 2.5 years, because I love my shmups. UN Squadron. It is widely regarded as one of the best ones on the Super Nintendo and is notoriously difficult. And I love difficult games. That's pretty much how I justify buying games now. They either have to be insanely difficult so I won't beat them right away, have high replay value, or exceptional multiplayer. couple more popular ones here. We have Super Punch-Out, the sequel to Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. An obscure game. Well, characters aren't obscure, but it's a rare Super Nintendo game. We have The Adventures of Batman and Robin. Now, this game is pretty expensive, and I stumbled upon it for like $5 in a bargain bin, and I just snagged it. But it holds so true to like the characteristics of the animated series, like, even the way the game is played, the way the characters play, the art style. It's pretty much like you're playing through the cartoon. Okay, got a few more in here. I really need to reorganize this. I'm running out of room. Final Fantasy II, or Final Fantasy IV if you want to be chronologically correct. Ooh, we'll save that one for last. That one's quite a story. Soul Blazer. It is very similar to the way Zelda plays, but it is an action RPG. Pretty fun for the little bit that I played of it. Justifiable to purchase. We don't really need to talk too much about this one. Somebody was just playing it, you know. Now this one here. This is called Jim Power: The Lost Dimension in 3D. I wouldn't recommend picking up this game unless you are solely upset with yourself and you want to make yourself cry. This is probably the most difficult game I have ever played in my entire life. Trumps Dark Souls, trumps any bullet hell shooter. Anything you can name that's a difficult game will pale in comparison to this. I can beat Ninja Gaiden, I can beat Contra, I can beat all of those games. You can name them all. Battletoads, I've beaten that too. I struggled to get past the first 2 or 3 stages of this game. So, the first stage is probably about 5 or 6 minutes long. No checkpoints. Everything is instant death. And your reaction time to enemies, if you're not taking your time, is minimal at best. And on top of that, you're timed. Good luck. I would emulate it if you want to try it. I wouldn't risk spending the money to buy it and then sorely hate yourself for buying it. Alright, we're almost to the bottom of the second bin now. Let me get all these out of here. I've at least sampled most of these games, and I have played at least 70% of them to completion. Alright. So now we're getting to a few more iconic ones. We have F-Zero, everybody's favorite racing game on the Super Nintendo next to Mario Kart. Donkey Kong Country 2, pretty much the game that I spent the most time as a kid playing. Another puzzle platformer that is excellent multiplayer, The Lost Vikings. And one of my favorite shmups, the very first one that I ever played, we have Strike Gunner, STG. This game takes place in 2008, if you would like to look up the story for it. Mario Paint, pretty much self-explanatory. This is a game that plays very similar to Super Metroid. It is Demon's Crest, and if you notice the guy that's on the cover there, that is Firebrand. He is the red ghoul from Ghosts and Goblins, or Super Ghouls and Ghosts, the one that everybody hates. He is your main character in this game. You actually play as him, accumulate tons of cool gargoyle and demon power-ups to progress through the game, and basically fend off somebody who's trying to take over the world through the demon realm. It's kind of cool. Interesting story. Make a villain a good guy. Another shooter, but this one is actually very rare. We have R-Type 3, the Third Lightning. It's very much improved off of Super R-Type. And then the original Secret of Mana. Very good co-op RPG. one of my favorite racing games on the Super Nintendo. It's not everybody's, but Stunt Race FX. It is a 3D racing game. And there's a game on PS1 called Motor Tune Grand Prix that I thought was very similar to this, but were not made by the same people. But it's anthropomorphic cars. You know, it's cool. They have eyeballs that swivel and cool sounds, decent tracks. But it's an average Super Nintendo game. Not great, but not bad. Oofda. Alright, we're into the next stack here. Couple of shooters. Darius Twin. Kind of picked it up just because it was a shooter. Haven't played much of it. This game, Biometal, I solely bought it because of the song that is played at the title screen. Look it up. And if anybody's a fan of Game Grumps, we have Goop Troop. Action puzzle game. Pretty fun for co-op. And a very, very fun multiplayer game. Super Smash TV. If anybody's seen the film The Running Man, that's basically what this is. Like 100% to the T. That's what it is. Alright, now we're getting into the bulk of my actual Nintendo games. We have an action RPG called Clash at Demon Head. It's kind of got a world map, but you go to a menu screen to activate it, and I believe it's somewhat free roam. You can backtrack and go wherever you wish. I haven't played that much into it quite yet. And here we have Solar Jetman. This is basically No Man's Sky on the NES. That's like 95% how my friend described this, and he's played both. Snake Rattle and Roll, a pretty fun isometric platformer, especially if you play 2 players. Run and gun shooter. It's like cowboys and Indians. It's called Gunsmoke. It actually gets pretty difficult towards the end, but it's still fun. I definitely recommend playing with a turbo set controller, though. Otherwise, your fingers will hurt. Very popular game. Everybody will know it. Mega Man 2. Oh, that box art, though. So good. Another shooter. It's basically kind of a clone of Gradius. It's called Life Force. It's even made by Konami, so they had a good formula, and they went with it. We have Wild Gunman. If you want to test your reaction time as a light gun game, that's a fun one. Ted, you'll know this one. I bought this one like the day before you guys probably recorded your videos, because I was considering buying it, and then I saw that you guys were uploading it as I was walking out the door with it. Alright, so now we're getting into more of the ones that I had when I was a kid. Got my original copy of Gradius, one of my favorite shooters, aside from Strike Gunner when I was a kid. I did not play Metroid as a kid. I really didn't even want to have an NES copy of Metroid because there's no guidance through it. You have to draw up your own maps or look up a guide. But I did buy this copy because it's the alternate art copy where you got various suit Samus on the cover. So that's mainly why I have that one. I'll still play it eventually one of these days, but it's not high on my list. Now these next 5, I mainly want to show these off because of the covers they're in. It took me a long time to accumulate these, but if anybody remembers this store, this is their complete set of original dust covers. Bring home the fun. So we have kind of an obscure action platformer called Quantum Fighter. You fight with your hair, and you kind of play like Ninja Gaiden. It's a really fun game. It's kind of difficult at times, but once you get the hang of it, I thoroughly enjoyed it, so that's why I bought it. game that I haven't quite played yet, but I want to, called Castlevania 2. I know it's not as good as the other ones, but it's a little more like lenient, passive for a Castlevania game, so you kind of just go at your own pace. Now this game, I spent many, many years in my childhood trying to beat this game. Took me 3 years to get through it once. And then by the time I finally beat the 8th fortress, it says all the fortresses have reactivated and have increased defenses. So it pulls the ghouls and ghosts on you. And as far as I know, like, you need to have to be pretty much perfect to beat that game. Your time constraint is very limited. You have to have a specific amount of bombs. It's very brutal. You have this one. It's an obscure shooter. It's called Abadox. It's definitely fun. It's very weird. It's like all kind of bugs and nasty like guts and intestine monsters and things like that. It's really weird. You even kind of see one on the cover there. It's like, Rah! There you go. Give somebody nightmares. Ah. Looks like the Real Monsters guy that's holding his eyeballs in his hands. Now this game doesn't look like much on the cover. The cover doesn't even do it any justice at all. That won't tell you nothing. I found this game completely by random. A customer came in and he's like, "Hey, I used to play this game on Nintendo that had a seaweed boss in it." And I found out the game. I found out that we had it, and I got it transferred to our store for him, and he never picked it up. So I played it for a while, and it's a half side-scrolling shooter, half action-adventure RPG game with tons of power-ups. Like, fully explorative, just like Zelda 1. And because it was so intuitive, I bought it. And this game is great. Like, nobody knows what it is, but it's definitely high up on my list of recommendations for obscure games. Alright. A few more NES games left in here. We do have quite a few. You have Yoshi. It's like a Tetris clone. Pretty fun. One of my favorites as a kid. Burger Time. I love that game. Another one that is a semi-clone of Mario, but pinball. Probably one of the best pinball games on the NES. And here's a random game that I bought. It's not that great, but it's definitely different. It's called Dino Wars. It's an action platformer it gets brutally tough at times, but you can turn into a dinosaur. You like jump into a big dinosaur mech suit and fight other dinosaurs. So. Kind of obscure game, but 3D World Runner. It's kind of interesting to play if you actually have 3D glasses, but it will make you nauseous if you're not used to it. Brutally difficult after you've beaten level 1. So, still fun, but it's like a really arcadey game. You pick up, you play it, and you get your butt kicked, and then you go play another game. One of my favorite racing games on the Nintendo, Super Off-Road. Very fun multiplayer. A little bit better with cheats, actually, because the AI cheats really bad. God, we're already up to a half hour on this, and I'm still not even done. Alright. Another fun multiplayer game. Got track and field. Pretty much just a button masher. See who can do the best at certain mini games. Now this is another game that I bought on a whim. It is Mendel Palace. I don't really know how to describe it other than it's like a kind of a puzzle style game, but it's an action game, and like you fight some really weird enemies. Like there's Olympic swimmers, sumo wrestlers, the Mohawk guys. It's weird, but it's still fun. Here's a game that was actually recommended to me by somebody. If you want a full-on like action-adventure RPG that's a platformer, Faxanadu, It's pretty tough. I would look up a little bit of a guide for this game, just mainly so that you know what the items and everything actually is, because it does run off like the suit system from cards. There's, Joker, Queen, King, so you get like a J key, a Q key, a K key, and, yeah. Still fun. It's actually pretty affordable too. I think it's like $10. Find it online. Definitely fun. The music's pretty catchy. It does have a slow start, but once you get it all figured out, then usually pretty good.